Sir Angus Scott is a compatriot of mine, I infer from his name. I've never spoken to him, never met him. I had no part in the tabling of his petition, which was launched immediately that the news was deliberately smuggled out just before the bells on Hogmanay that Tony Blair was going to be elevated to the highest echelon of knighthood, a member of the Royal Garter. Angus Scott beat me to it. I was still writing my petition, and I'm glad that he did, because coming from him, a person on the opposite side of politics, to me, has been able to garner support across all of the parts of the political spectrum in a way that a petition tabled by me might not have as effectively been able to do. So I'm only interested in the outcome of actions, not the credit for them. But I have to give credit to this man who's not a politician, has never been involved in politics, but who found the right moment and the right words to table on change.org, and he has produced a miracle. Well over 1 million people. You remember I had a dream last week. I spoke about it in my monologue last week, about how we had to get to 1 million. It was a dream. But actually, on Friday, we passed the 1 million mark. Surely the fastest $1 million, million signature petition ever. And it's still growing and growing and growing. There it is, change.org. We still need your signatures because, well, we had well over 1 million in the Million Man Woman March on February 15, 2003 against the war. So we ought to be able to do even better than that, given that a whole generation of people in Britain could not have been on that march and indeed could not have known what they know now, that the war was based on a pack of lies. This is very important. Her Majesty the Queen has somehow been induced to give the highest possible award to a man who lied to her armed forces, lied to her parliament, lied to her people about the need for a war, an invasion and occupation of Iraq. Quite apart from the fact that 1 million people lie in the cold earth this evening that might otherwise have been alive if this liar had not hoodwinked everyone, except those of us who stood against him, into an illegal and utterly pointless and absolutely counterproductive invasion and occupation of Iraq. 1 million Iraqis, British soldiers, American soldiers, soldiers from other nationalities. And then there's the matter of cascading ISIS and Al-Qaeda around the world. How many other lives has that cost? How much more blood has that spilled? And as I frequently point out, we haven't reached the bottom yet, not by a long chalk. The lives of the youngest person in your household will still be affected, will still develop under a cloud in the deformation of the world that this liar and his war has caused into human society. It has extremized, fanaticized some of the worst elements in the world. It has got people, their throats cut, their heads cut off. It has got hundreds of thousands of dead people around the world in the name of an Islamist fanaticism, the oxygen for which was provided by the imbecile George W. Bush and his brain, Tony Blair. Don't expect me to call him Sir Tony, Your Highness. I think that his crime in Iraq should have led him to a trial at the tribunal in The Hague for war crimes and crimes against humanity. But even, Your Majesty, if you can't accept that, you have to face this fact. This man and his grisly missus carefully cheated Her Majesty's Treasury out of hundreds of thousands of pounds in the property transaction relating to the Marylebone affair revealed in the Pandora Papers. This man's attitude to the City of London, along with Gordon Brown, led to the crash in 2008, the reverberations from which also have never stilled. We have been living in austerity for 13 long years because Tony Blair and his friend Bill Clinton decided on the lightest of touches when it came to the regulation of the banking industry. There are so many other examples I could give, Your Majesty. Now, I realize this is really a pickle you're in now. What are you going to do now that you have granted this mass killer this high honor? I appreciate that it's difficult for you, even when 1 million of your subjects have beseeched you to in this petition, and many, many more still will do so. It's difficult for you to find a way out. But if you're looking for a way out, Your Majesty, the thing to do is to get Tony Blair to decline the honor. If he was a man at all, of course, he'd already have declined it. Look at the embarrassment, excruciating shame that he's brought on you and your house over this honor. If he had any scintilla of decency about him, he would already have declined it. The problem is he has no such scintilla. So you'll have to let it be known to him by one means or another, preferably by many, that he now has to decline this honor, because we will not back down, Your Majesty. We have come far in a week with well over 1 million people behind us, and we will not back down. We will blockade Buckingham Palace rather than allow this war criminal through those gates to be knighted by you. And that would be a terrible end to your long reign, would it not, Your Majesty? It would be a terrible start for your heir and successor, would it not, Your Majesty? This is going to discolour everything about your reign if it ends in this ignominy of hundreds of thousands of us in the Mall blockading Buckingham Palace because you decided to honour a war criminal, a liar, a mountebank. Now, we have been saved these last 14 years by your late husband. If it were not for the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, Tony Blair would have got this knighthood many years ago. He didn't get it because your husband had the common sense to know that the British people would not look kindly on such an action from the monarch. Sadly, for all of us, Prince Philip is no longer with us. And somebody, I'd like to know who, has prevailed upon you to do what Prince Philip would never have countenanced you doing. It's not too late, Your Majesty, but it's getting late. And you now have to act. Because don't imagine that this mountebank, this con man, this actor-manager, Tony Blair, is going to withdraw from this imbroglio with any dignity of his own volition.